Across Canada, postal workers have hit the picket lines. The union, representing 55,000 employees, launched a nationwide strike over the changes Ottawa's making to the way Canada Post does business. Canada Post is losing about $10 million a day, every day. The government says the goal is to get the Crown Corporation back in the black.
Canada Post is effectively insolvent. It provides an essential service to Canadians, and in particular to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. And Canadians are rightfully attached to it and want it saved. However, repeated bailouts from the federal government are not the solution.
Some of the proposed reform includes ending home delivery services and closing some rural post offices. It's an idea that's been floated before, but now the government wants to see action. Canada Post has been given 45 days to come up with its own cost-cutting plan to help stabilize its finances and ensure its survival. And in response, on Thursday night, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers went on a nationwide strike opposing these government demands for reform. Jon Hamilton is Canada Post's Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Engagements. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Rosemary.
The federal government has directed Canada Post to do this, but they've given you 45 days, I guess, to submit a cost-saving plan. What are you going to do over the course of that 45 days? And are you going to speak to Canadians at all about what they're looking for?
Well, we have 45 days to put that plan together, and we're now working on that. We watched the minister's announcement this week, and and lifted a lot of the things in terms of the regulatory restrictions that have frozen Canada Post in place for decades, and will allow us to finally try and align the postal system to where Canadians are at today, not where they were in 1994. So we are now putting those plans together, and we will share them with the minister, and then I'm assuming we'll be making those public. And explaining to Canadians what that change is going to look like. And between now and then, we'll be sharing with Canadians some of the guiding principles that as we develop that plan, here's what we'll be taking into consideration. Here's how we'll make decisions. And also ensuring that people are aware of things like, since the last time we converted community mailboxes, we have had a best-in-class built with experts accommodation program for anyone that we converted from door-to-door to community mailboxes, so that they can overcome the barriers and can continue to get their mail.
It goes much further than that, of course, what the government has directed you to do. That's sort of the thing that people seize on, even though I think it's 3/4 of Canadians don't get door-to-door delivery. 3/4 of they get a community mailbox. For instance, the moratorium on closing rural post offices has now been lifted too. What does that kind of change do for Canada Post in terms of your profitability or your preventing you from losing money, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. And that moratorium was put in place in 1994, and it never changed. Yeah. So what it allows us to do is really look at the network and decide how do we provide the services that Canadians want today. There will be areas that were rural back in 1994 that clearly aren't rural anymore, where we have a number of post offices within a few blocks, and we can make a change because that's clearly overserved. But because that moratorium stayed in place for so long, it meant that we had to maintain some post offices that people had stopped going to. They were going to, the drugstore and other post offices. Right. But it really strained our ability to invest in rural, remote, and northern. And our commitment and our mandate is always to serve all Canadians. We're proud to do that. No other delivery company is going to do that. But by having a version of rural that was based in 1994 meant that things were frozen in place and we couldn't make the changes we needed to make.
Okay, so obviously in response to much of this, the CUPW, the union, has now gone on strike. You were already in the midst of a labor negotiation, and I understand now Canada Post is saying that you are reassessing the global offer. So are you using the directive from the government to try and force the union's hand to come to an agreement?
No, we were preparing to present global offers to the union in response to their offers in August that clearly we couldn't afford, adding some $2.8 billion over the 4 years of agreement, adding more personal days, 17 on top of stat holidays and up to 7 weeks vacation, and et cetera, et cetera. So we want to put forward something that's fair to our employees, but is affordable. But obviously, with the direction we received, that we've just started on taxpayer injections to keep the lights on at the Canada Post, that is not going to be a long-term solution. We never wanted it to be. That we need to, in order to make the changes that we need to make, we need to look at the offers we're putting forward so that we're able to execute and make sure that we can be the post office that Canadians need right now.
But does I guess what my point is, are the recommendations in the directive for the government to change the way Canada Post operates, does it give you leverage over the union to try and reach a deal that is not as costly?
I wouldn't argue that it's given us any leverage. They walked out in response to them. I think it is, as Canada Post, we've been told it's now time to start to get back away from the taxpayer subsidies and make the changes, and given clear directive on the expectations on that. So, we need to ensure that we are ready to do that. But ultimately, it's unfortunate the union went on strike. We'd prefer to be sitting down having tough conversations face to face, even if it wasn't about collective agreements, about these changes and how we implement them. Because, we can make these changes. Are we going to be a leaner organization going forward? Absolutely, top to bottom, management included. But just within our CUPW represented employees, we have 14,000 that are going to retire over the next 5 years. More than half of those can retire today. So you have an opportunity through attrition to bring the corporation to the size that it needs to be while maintaining service. But the problem is Canadians as taxpayers are paying more and more for a system they're using less and less.
Okay. Jon Hamilton, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
For more on this, I'm joined by Jim Gallant, a negotiator with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, or CUPW, the union. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you.
The government has directed Canada Post to make these changes. So why was the union's response to those suggestions to go on strike, Jim?
These suggestions aren't the government's. They're Canada Post's. Canada Post came with these suggestions. Mr. Hamilton said in the news this week, we're dealing with the same things that the union put forward 2 years ago. It's the same thing from Canada Post. We've been negotiating on and off for the best of 2 years, and those are the things that Canada Post wanted. They're the things at the table that they wanted, things like closures of post offices and the end of door-to-door, and we refuse those. And now they've gone through an industrial commission paid for by the government, and they've now that commission took Canada Post's side on their recommendations, and now the government relies on a research that they paid for, and Canada Post said in the first place, and now they go, oh, it's independent.
Okay, I take your point, but the reality is that Canada Post is losing money, millions every day, and $1.5 billion this year. So surely the union recognizes that things can't stay the way they are.
But when the minister says we're losing $10 million a day, first off, 10 million, it's a pretty exact number. So whatever that number is, I'm sure they are losing money. We've been on strike since last November, other than a pause the government put on. But Canadians have had no confidence in what's going on, because the government has put a strike off for 6 months, and then we move into an overtime ban. And when we're not taking any overtime, they're claiming they're losing $10 million a day. They've moved, if you look at the second quarter of Canada Post, they claim that they lost $407 million. And if you look at in the same report, Purolator shows that they're up $300 million. So they're moving stuff to Purolator, and this is from the government that moved an anti-scab bill, Bill 58, C-58, and now they're moving our mail to somebody else that's delivering it.
But are you saying, Jim, that you don't think that Canada Post needs reforms and to modernize?
I think that their management squad is awful. I think that they've been there since 2018. Go on their website. There's one of them since 2018, and the rest of them are since. And that's when Canada Post started losing money, according to them. And they've done things like sell the plant in Vancouver to Amazon. And Amazon, it was not good enough for them, but it's good enough for Amazon. They build a plant in Scarborough, and they're not using it properly. Those are the things that management does. They spend millions and millions of Canadian dollars, and it's hundreds of millions, and That's where we're at. I understand that they say we're effectively insolvent. There's no such thing. Are the RCMP insolvent? Are the armed forces insolvent? It's not the truth. Government can't be insolvent.
But the difference, of course, is that the RCMP continue to deliver a service that most Canadians want, which is, I think, not the case that Canada Post is saying, that Canadians do not need home delivery every day. They do not need rural post offices. So the government views what they're doing not as a subsidy, but as a bailout. Surely that is evidence that Canada Post needs to modernize, and the union with it.
Well, I think that if you listen to seniors groups and people with disabilities and rural communities, First Nations, there were 900 submissions to the Kaplan Commission, and almost all of them said that they wanted more service, not less service, and they wanted us to provide it. And it's Canada Post management sending away. You can, like, these things are, you can check them, fact check them. They're sending things to Purolator. They're making this the situation so they can claim that there's a loss.
Okay, so what is the union going to do here, Jim? Because Canada Post has now revised its global offers. I would imagine, because as I said to Jon Hamilton there, they believe they have some leverage. What is the likelihood that postal workers are going to get back to work anytime soon?
Mr. Hamilton, when I listen to him, I feel like I'm out in the country, the smell that's on there. He ends up saying that they want to be at the table and they want to talk. We told them no to their offer. 50,000 workers said no to an offer over 50 days ago, and they haven't come and talked to us once. They say that they were going to give us an offer this week, but we know that the minister had told them ahead of time about what he was going to say, because we have paperwork that shows that. So in the end, they could have bargained with us. They could right now say, we want to go to the table. None of that's going on. They're saying maybe next Thursday or Friday.
Just to go back to your point there, though, the government is allowed to decide the future of Canada Post. It is a Crown corporation, and it is allowed to make that direction. Are you suggesting that the government is taking its orders from Canada Post, that it's not making an independent decision?
I am saying that, first off, and second off, I would disagree with you. I think Canadians should decide what Canada Post is and how it goes through the future. And they keep saying that, it's Canadians. But when you asked Mr. Hamilton, are you going to consult Canadians in the meantime? He didn't say yes. He said, well, tell them what's going to go on. Right. They don't want Canadians' opinion. They want to do what they're going to do, and they've got everybody lined up to do it.
Okay, and so I'll just end on this. What would you say then to people who are relying on Canada Post, small businesses and others, in the coming weeks and feel like they're kind of stuck between the union and the corporation?
We want to be out delivering mail, parcels, flyers. That's what we want to do for small business. We're the economic engine of the country, and everybody's talking about elbows up, but the government's using UPS and FedEx to deliver Canadians parcels. People are getting stuff that usually goes to the post office through them. So the money has to be where the mouth is, and the government should support Canada Post, and we should end up with a postal service that serves Canadians.
Jim Gallant, thank you for coming in this morning. I appreciate your perspective very much. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you.
Canadians rely on Canada Post. And it's the responsibility of the government, first and foremost the responsibility of Canada Post as a corporation, the unions in Canada Post, to make sure that Canada Post as an organization is viable.
Saying significant changes need to be made at Canada Post to make it viable as an organization. His government has ordered the Crown Corporation to make a number of reforms in an attempt to stabilize its financial position. The government says the company lost more than $1 billion in 2024, and it's losing approximately $10 million every single day. That's why Ottawa is ordering Canada Post to come up with a cost-saving plan within 45 days. And it suggests, according to the recommendations, ending home delivery. That's about 4 million addresses that still receive their mail directly at their homes. Transitioning them to community mailboxes. 3/4 of Canadians already have those. And lifting the ban on closing rural post offices, which has been in place since 1994. The Mayor of North Grenville, Ontario, Nancy Peckford, joins me now. Nice to see you, Mayor.
Yes, lovely to see you too.
So your North Grenville is about 20,000 people, I think. Give me a sense of how the strike itself is going to affect your community.
Well, obviously, as a small but growing community, we have a heavy reliance on Canada Post, just like so many communities across the country. So obviously, recognize that the strike situation is difficult for everyone. Of course, we support the right to strike, but it's going to be tough for our community. There's no doubt.
Okay, so obviously the strike is in response to the reforms that were directed by Canada Post to put in place, authorizing the end of home delivery. Have you been hearing from people in the municipality about this? How are they feeling about that?
Yeah, I absolutely have. I mean, some people certainly are very aware of the fiscal realities of Canada Post and that there's a desire for operational efficiencies. But at the same time, we have a very large rural urban municipality, 350 square kilometers, in fact, both the town of Grenville and several rural hamlets. And the elimination of home delivery, particularly on rural roads, will be challenging for some of our residents. There is no doubt.
Yeah. The other thing that you will feel, I think, in a real way, and part of the reason we're talking to you, is that the federal government is lifting the moratorium that had been in place since 1994 on closing rural post offices. If your post office is shut down, what happens?
I think it's a devastating development for North Grenville. Our post office is a hub. It's in the downtown, the heart of Grenville. It's a very active place. It really is not just a busy place, but it's an opportunity for people to connect, check in, frequent, a downtown location. So we're very, very worried that Canada Post might, target smaller communities like ours. While we know we're growing, and in fact, Canada Post has expanded its service in the municipality by virtue of our growth, it would be very sad and quite disruptive to see the disappearance of our local post office.
Do you think that should be off the table?
I think that the Canada Post really needs to start talking with municipalities. I understand it's still early days, and really this is my invitation on behalf of, I think, small towns across the country to engage in a dialogue, to really see what it looks like on the ground. I think numbers tell one story and people tell another, and I think it's incumbent upon Canada Post now, given where they're at, to really engage strategically municipalities so that we can certainly share our perspectives and they can hear directly from the clients that they serve.
Yeah. Mayor Peckford, thank you for making the time. I appreciate it very much.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
The Canada Post strike obviously means mails and parcels aren't being processed or delivered, and that is affecting Canadian citizens, residents, and businesses nationwide. The strike is another blow to small businesses. Joining me now is Lorne James. He sells model trains across Canada from Tillsonburg in southwestern Ontario. Good to see you this morning, Lorne.
Thanks for having me back, Rosemary.
Yeah, and I love to see you there with your trains. When we last spoke, there was another strike. That's when we last talked to you. Here we are again. How are you feeling?
One big giant nightmare keep on going with Canada Post servicing small businesses like ours across Canada. It's frustrating. At least this time it's not Christmas and Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but now we have a service interruption with no potential restore date. And we still haven't fixed the root cause of Canada Post bleeding money and reduced services and clients leaving Canada Post after the last strike, as well as clients leaving after the previous work stoppage. So they have to stop bleeding soon.
So I guess that's a good way to ask you the question: why do you use Canada Post and not someone else?
So after the strike that happened in November, we implemented multiple shippers and we continued with multiple shippers after they returned to work. But there's some addresses that you can't service, some addresses that only have a PO box. And there's parts of northern BC and parts of northern Quebec and parts of northern Ontario that is only serviced last mile by Canada Post. So you could use Canpar, FedEx, or UPS, but they still hand it off to Canada Post.
Right.
So that service is still needed in those spots, but I think a reduction of service and a review of retail assets, locations, labor, both on the union and management side, has to have a reduction. They need a reorg. They need a reorg and a restructure to sustain businesses like ours to keep using them.
Yeah. So what's the impact on your business? It's obviously only been a few days, but I know for you immediately start feeling it.
Generally about 4,000 to 5,000 in lost sales a day. We did experience lost sales when the U.S. took out de minimis in the end of August, as well as the first round of May. So it's all incremental. Thankfully, I have a strong domestic customer base that has stayed with me and stayed with our company and our family business for years and steadfast. But you're trying to find alternates, and you're trying to meet that end of mile. And some customers, we're just going to hold their parcels. And with Prime Minister Carney requesting us to diversify trade, I have customers outside of Canada, in Europe, Australia, EU, and now I have to find alternates with them to ship rather than using the postal service. So it's a challenge moving the hot potato around, but our customers have been faithful to us, and we do appreciate their support and strength.
I'll just end on this. You obviously have strong views about Canada Post. You want it to continue, it sounds like, but you do think that it also needs to modernize and change a bit.
Absolutely. Canada Post grew during the pandemic when COVID had made e-commerce more powerful. Our business grew tremendously. But when they started losing large clients and built up infrastructure and had laborers, they should have started to make right-size changes. Now they need to make a lot of right-size changes, both in reduction of union labor, management labor, likely reducing of leaseholds, retail locations, and probably overcapacity of some of their supply point and sorting centers. So they've got a lot of systematic changes that are not just one-time operational losses that they're going to have to financially absorb. But Canada Post still has a mandate to service the country, but it's probably going to be on a reduced schedule, both with going to community boxes as well as more locations for pickup and parcels if you can't get service at your door.
Lorne, before I let you go, what am I looking at? What is this train right in front of you? This cool bridge and the train.
I decided today to do something simple for the viewers on CBC on your show. This bridge in front of me is called the Cisco Bridge, which spans the Thompson Fraser River Canyon out in BC. And this is a handmade bridge in brass made years ago. And it's an iconic bridge out in the west coast of BC. And I had some Canadian content. This car being the car that we make, it's actually made real life in National Steel Car in Hamilton. Yeah. Another car that is serviced down in Welland. They do pipe all over the world. Yeah. And then our caboose that we make. So I like to have a lot of Canadiana to tie in the show.
That's very thoughtful of you. You could turn me into a model train aficionado if I talk to you enough. Lorne, thank you for sharing all this with us. We appreciate it. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Rosie.